What's up guys, that got the pencil here, and let me tell you, first impressions are very, very important, especially in fiction when introducing something like a major villain. Typically, if a villain fails to capture the reader or viewer in their first introduction, especially if it's a multi-part introduction, they have lost a lot of presence, a lot of favorability, and honestly a lot of retention. A lot of forgettable or lesser villains tend to have lackluster introductions that tend to miss one or more things that should make a villain introduction successful. The three main things that make for a good villain introduction are build-up, jobbing, and a powerful presence. If an introduction lacks any of those three things, well, it's not looking too good for that villain. However, we don't have to worry, because Overhaul from My Hero Academia has a stellar villain introduction. Overhaul isn't perfect. I'm the first to admit that. I've voiced my negative opinions on Overhaul and his arc before, and I'll do it again in a heartbeat, trust me. But his intro is perfect. Let's get to the first part of this great introduction, build up. My Hero Academia in general suffers a lot from this, due to the series' really fast pacing. Typically, a villain gets a good 5 panels before being thrust into conflict with the main characters or protagonists. Any fellow student antagonist, Shigaraki, Gentle, any of the League of Villains really, none of them get truly great build-up before their introduction. Good, yes, but not really great. However, Overhaul has solid build-up before he was even properly introduced. Rumors, a mythos, uncertainty is great for a villain. It makes the reader or the viewer ask questions. Being introduced in chapter 115, Overhaul is shown to have overwhelmed multiple villains at once, but we don't know how. When Twice encounters him, they don't even interact. All we get is a name, Overhaul, a being who seems to just exist as an anomaly amongst the chaos of the chapter. I consider this the first half of his introduction, as we do not understand his quirk, we have not seen him in action, and we know nothing but his name. This half of the introduction succeeds a lot in the first part of a good introduction, build-up. Overhaul, by simply existing before the reader, has displayed himself as above other villains. He stands out amongst a crowd of kindling that Dabi mentions earlier in the chapter. There is an understanding that despite not doing anything that we could see, he is a threat that is not to be underestimated. He leads an entourage, all of whom stand taller than him, but he's the strongest, not the largest. His current group all wears masks that hide their face, but not Overhaul. He looks upon the sickness before him with a clear view that implies a native dominance over the world around him. All of this build-up establishes an idea of what he should be, purely through visual storytelling and a name. A lot of subconscious work, not much things that are really said, things that one can only notice upon reflection. What makes it good though is that no one had to say Overhaul was strong. The reader knew this by his very appearance in one chapter, that he would have a noteworthy presence. However, then he does get build-up from other characters as well. Twice sees him and decides that he would be worthy of the League of Villains, a group that was known to be a threat within the world up to that point. By the time the Overhaul arc began, there were no other organized villain groups that we really knew of, and most certainly none of them to the scale and power of the League of Villains. They had powerhouses such as the original Nomu, Muscular, All for One, and that was all we knew of up to that point. They were the big bads of the hero world and the villain world, and thus being offered to join them meant that Overhaul was a notable threat. We see that Overhaul, the leader of the group known as the 8 Precepts of Death, is going to go meet the League of Villains. The name is intimidating, the heroine is panicked, and the man she's telling looks troubled. Verbal build-up and non-verbal build-up to Overhaul. All great so far, filling one of the main requirements of build-up in multiple senses from questions to verbal hype. Let's get to the next point, Overhaul's true introduction to the audience and established characters. Jobbing is important, undeniably so. Nothing hypes up a character more than that character doing something easily that previous characters, hero or villain, struggled to do in the past. Almost every series even remotely steeped in combat has jobbers, from Dragon Ball to 7 Deadly Sins. Jobbing naturally makes a new character, whether they be a protagonist or an antagonist, intimidating. Imagine this, a villain from a previous arc that took effort from powerful characters to defeat and outmaneuver, fodderized in one touch. That's impossible, that would be crazy. Oh, that happened. And it works great. Magne, a person capable of fighting head-to-head with pro heroes and even one-shotting one, was instantly executed by Overhaul in one touch. This performs multiple important factors. 1, it hypes up Overhaul's power. He's like Shigaraki on steroids. He touches you, you're dead. 2, It displays Overhaul's personality. You hit him, you prove yourself a threat, you are anything but useful, and your life is forfeit. Remember, he came to the League to absorb them into himself and to use them. However, he did not care for one of their very few members, executing them instantly. But by doing this, we understand that Overhaul is ruthless and methodical. Every single villain before him in My Hero Academia had something, some little quirk or special thing that made them less effective at what they did. For Shigaraki, it was his inexperience and lack of focus. Muscular, his penchant for torture, or his prey's suffering. For Mr. Compress, it was performance flair. Toga, her obsession. Spinner, his loyalties to Stain. Stain, his loyalties to his morals. Twice, his insanity. And Dabi with his lack of effort, and even Magdane with her confidence and mocking. However, Overhaul's unique point does not hamper his ability, it enhances it. His disdain of filth and contact only makes it so that he is more willing to kill, more willing to punish, more willing to commit heinous acts without restraint, which is what limits many other villains. And that is how he ends up forcing all previous villains to job to him ideologically and physically. He is something never seen before, and that is what pushes him beyond a lot of other villains. This instantly makes him more threatening to the audience and to the characters in the world. To the audience, it's because he establishes that no one is safe. Everyone dies at Overhaul's whims, especially if they hit or touch him. And to defeat Overhaul, the main characters will have to hit and touch him. It establishes early on that everyone who challenges Overhaul is in for a one-touch fight because of his abilities, power, and mentality. The best thing about this is that it runs the same course for the characters in the world. Everyone who challenges Overhaul is in for a one-touch fight. Want to know what makes this even better? Overhaul doesn't just job one character, he jobs the entire League of Villains. Compress runs up, but Overhaul simply has him get shot in the arm and proceeds to destroy the arm of Compress as punishment for daring to challenge him. When Shigaraki, the leader and arguably one of the strongest members of the League outside of ranged powerhouses like Dabi, attacks him in a blind rage, Overhaul calls the substitute to take the attack for him and does not execute Shigaraki. Rather, upon his subordinates entering the room, he calls a ceasefire, and the League of Villains, outplayed, outnumbered, and most likely outpowered, has no choice but to obey and stop fighting. Overhaul just outdid the entire previous threat of the series while he was playing defensively. While casual, he dominated what proved a threat to our heroes many times in the past. That power is what locks Overhaul in, what makes his presence in the world of My Hero Academia one of staying and solid prominence. However, there is one last thing to discuss: Overhaul's presence. Presence is very important for a villain. Referencing Dragon Ball again, the main villains always had some sort of presence to them as early as their introduction. Frieza, an intimidating presence, putting fear into the hearts of men. Cell, an ominous presence that crawls beneath one's skin. Boo, an unpredictable, chaotic presence that makes one wonder what will happen next. All of these things are present from these characters' initial appearances. Overhaul has all of these, just as early as his first appearance. The intimidation comes from his ability, a man with the power to wipe you from existence with nothing more than a single touch, striking fear into the hearts of heroes like Bubble Girl and villains like Shigaraki. For the ominous presence, his appearance, he's a masked man wearing gloves followed by a group of masked rogues of various shapes and sizes that all fall behind and beneath him. His very presence makes you ask questions, and his intimidation factor from his power makes you not want to get close enough to ask. Finally, his chaotic presence. This comes from his personality. At most times, he's calm, businesslike, very firm and settled. However, the moment something touches him, whether it be dirt or another person, that's it. His other half reveals itself, the half that despises the filth of those lower than him, and is not afraid of erasing it the moment it dares to annoy him. The reason this is so unpredictable is because it is inconsistent on what makes him stop and go. He's shown to be able to handle a little bit of dirt, to violently murdering someone who hit him, to destroying the arm of another whose power was sealed, to jumping back to perfectly calm after one of his own men died. He did all of this in the span of a couple pages. Overhaul's presence in his introduction is a mixture of multiple factors that all terrify the audience, the characters, and everyone affected by him in his introduction. However, the final layer of Overhaul's presence that solidifies his amazing introduction is his aura of control. Through all of it, through the introduction of his ability, to his appearance, to his violent personality changes, he is in control. He controls his subordinate, he controls the fight with the League of Villains, he even appears to control the balance of life and death. And it all falls into the character that Overhaul is revealed to be. He wants to absorb the League of Villains, rid the world and its people of an illness, and control it all at the peak of the criminal underworld. Overhaul is all about control, and everything about its introduction feeds into that and establishes it strongly. And in the end, this is what a good villain introduction does. It establishes, explains, and displays everything one needs to know about a villain. A creator can explain and dive into more about a villain later on, or hype them up more later, like Horikoshi does, but an introduction is very important, and honestly, Horikoshi really nailed this one. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. I'm analyzing everything from anything, seriously, be ready, I'm just gonna sit down one day and establish and analyze something else on this channel, trust me. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off.